The atmosphere around Celtic Park had that familiar mix of tension and expectation, the kind you only really feel when a team desperately needs a response. From the first whistle, it was clear Celtic were trying to impose themselves, pushing the ball forward with intent, moving it quicker than in recent matches, and looking to stretch the opposition rather than recycle possession without purpose. There was an early sense that goals would come if the movement stayed sharp, especially with runners constantly attacking the space behind the defensive line. The opening goal summed that up perfectly. A moment of quality from Kieran Tierney arriving in the right area at the right time, showing that instinct he has always had. It was the sort of goal that lifts the whole stadium, not just because of the scoreline, but because it felt earned through pressure and intelligent positioning. After that breakthrough, Celtic looked more settled, but there was still a fragility about the game that could not be ignored. Aberdeen, despite offering very little going forward, began to grow into it simply by surviving the initial onslaught. You could feel the nerves creep in as Celtic failed to turn dominance into a second goal. There were moments where the ball over the top caused real problems, with Dyson Maeda's movement constantly dragging defenders' AFMers out of shape. That role he plays is absolutely vital in this system, not always glamorous but relentless. Time and again, he was first to loose balls, forcing mistakes and keeping Aberdeen pinned back. It is clear the manager sees him as a cornerstone of how this side wants to function, especially with the high tempo and direct runs that stretch teams vertically. Then came the setback, and it felt all too familiar. A turnover in a dangerous area, a quick transition, and suddenly Celtic were punished. The equalizer took the wind out of the stadium, and questions immediately resurfaced about confidence at the back. Kasper Schmeichel looked hesitant, caught between committing and holding his line, and at this level, that split second of doubt can be decisive. It was frustrating because up until that moment, Aberdeen had barely threatened, yet once again, Celtic found themselves level despite controlling most of the match. In previous weeks, that might have been the moment where heads dropped and the game slipped away. What followed, though, felt different. There was a resilience that has been missing, a refusal to panic even as the clock ticked on. Aberdeen's approach only added to the sense of disbelief as they continued to try and play out from the back, under pressure, rather than sitting deep and protecting the draw. That stubbornness was eventually their undoing. A mistake in possession handed Celtic a golden opportunity, and this time it was taken with composure. Nicholas Kuhn had found himself in a similar situation against Hearts not long ago, and this finish carried the same calm assurance. From that range, there was no chance of a miss, and the relief around the ground was almost tangible. With the lead restored, Celtic played with more freedom. The midfield, which has come in for heavy criticism, started to knit things together more effectively. There was still the odd misplaced pass, moments that made you wince, but there was also a clearer structure in how the ball moved through the thirds. Callum McGregor looked more like himself, dictating tempo and offering angles, while others around him seemed more confident in their roles. It was not perfect, far from it, but it finally resembled a plan rather than a collection of individuals trying to force something to happen. As the game opened up, chances began to pile up to an almost ridiculous extent. Crosses flew in from both sides, defenders were stretched, and Aberdeen simply could not cope with the volume of pressure. Kieran Tierney in particular was outstanding, almost conducting the game from the left side. His delivery was consistent, his timing impeccable, and his understanding of when to overlap or hold position gave Celtic a constant outlet. It felt like one of those performances where you look back and wonder how the scoreline was not far more emphatic. The woodwork was struck multiple times, headers flashed agonizingly wide, and you could sense the collective frustration that the game was not already beyond doubt. The decisive moment arrived through a blend of youth, experience, and identity. A superb ball into the box found James Forrest, and the reaction inside Celtic Park said everything. Forrest scoring again, extending that incredible run of goals across 17 consecutive seasons, was more than just another statistic. It was a reminder of continuity, of standards, and of what it means to deliver when it matters. Nay, the ovation he received was fully deserved, not only for the goal, but for what he represents during a period of transition and uncertainty. At 3-1, the contest finally felt settled, and the mood shifted from anxiety to cautious optimism. On the touchline, the reaction from Wilfried Nancy was telling. There was no wild celebration, more a visible release of pressure, the expression of someone who knows how important that win was. Around him, players shared similar reactions, arms raised, smiles breaking through as if a weight had been lifted. Those moments matter, especially for a squad that has struggled to find belief in recent weeks. The performance was not without flaws, and nobody is pretending this suddenly solves all the issues. The lack of clinical finishing remains a concern, particularly in the forward areas, where chances must be converted more ruthlessly. The defensive transitions also continue to look vulnerable, especially when possession is lost cheaply in midfield. But what stood out most was the response to adversity. Going behind in the context of recent results could have led to another disappointing afternoon. Instead, Celtic found a way through sheer persistence and structure. There is still a long road ahead, and much will depend on how this momentum is carried into the next matches. A full week on the training ground now becomes invaluable, giving the manager time to refine the system and reinforce the principles seen here. Confidence, once shaken, does not return overnight, but performances like this can act as a foundation. The challenge now is consistency, backing this up against opponents who will test Celtic in different ways, especially away from home, on difficult pitches and in hostile environments. For now, though this match felt like a starting point rather than an end point, the crowd saw effort, intent, and glimpses of cohesion that had been missing. Players stepped up, key figures delivered, and the team showed it could weather a storm and still come out on top. Whether this becomes the spark for a sustained run remains to be seen, but there was enough here to suggest that the story of this season is far from written. As the noise settled and the game moved into its later phases, what really stood out was how Celtic continued to push rather than protect what they had. There was no sense of the side dropping off or trying to manage the clock in a conservative way. Instead, the tempo stayed high, the passing remained brave, and the intent to score again was obvious. That approach carried its risks, especially with the midfield sometimes left exposed, but it also reflected a belief in the system that has not always been visible. Players kept taking responsibility, demanding the ball, and trying to make things happen, even when fatigue began to show. The midfield balance, in particular, deserves closer attention. It has been an area of concern for a while, yet in this match there were clear signs of improvement. The spacing was better, the angles sharper, and there was more willingness to play forward rather than sideways. There were still moments where possession was surrendered too cheaply, and those moments almost invited trouble, but overall, the unit functioned with greater coherence. It felt like a group starting to understand each other's movements, which is crucial in a system that relies so heavily on timing and positional awareness. One of the most encouraging aspects was the contribution from players who have been relatively quiet in recent weeks. Several of them looked more assured, more comfortable in their roles, and more decisive in their actions. That confidence seemed to spread across the pitch. When one player pressed, another followed. When a run was made, the pass usually came. These are small details, but they are the building blocks of a team trying to rediscover its identity. Against an opponent reduced to 10 men, the expectation is always dominance. Yet that dominance still has to be executed, and Celtic largely managed that here. Defensively, there remains a sense of vulnerability, particularly when the ball is turned over in central areas. The equalizing goal was a reminder of how quickly things can unravel when structure is lost. The backline found itself exposed, and the recovery runs lacked the urgency needed to fully snuff out the danger. It is an issue that opponents will continue to target, especially those with pace and a willingness to counter quickly. Improving that aspect will be vital if Celtic are to string together positive results. In goal, the spotlight inevitably fell on Kasper Schmeichel. Confidence is a fragile thing for a goalkeeper, and at times he appeared uncertain in his decision-making. Whether to come out, whether to hold position, whether to commit fully, those hesitations can transmit anxiety to the defenders in front of him. There is a growing sense among the support that competition for that spot might be necessary, not as a punishment, but as a way to reset and refocus. These are difficult calls for any manager, especially in a period where stability is desperately needed. The attacking play, however, offered plenty of encouragement. The volume of chances created was staggering, and the expected goals tally reflected that dominance. Striking the woodwork repeatedly, missing headers from close range, and seeing shots blocked at the last moment all contributed to a feeling that the scoreline could have been far more convincing. This is where the conversation inevitably turns to the need for greater quality in the final third. The patterns are there, the build-up is improving, but without a consistent finisher, the pressure remains on the rest of the team to be perfect. That reality feeds into the broader discussion about squad depth and recruitment. There are clear gaps, particularly in attacking areas where the loss of proven goal scorers has not been adequately addressed. Asking young or inconsistent players to carry that burden week after week is a heavy demand, and it shows in moments of hesitation or poor decision-making in front of goal. Reinforcements are not a luxury, they are a necessity if this system is to truly flourish and if the momentum from this match is to be sustained. Despite all of that, the reaction to the winning goals told its own story. The celebrations were not over the top, but they were heartfelt. You could see the relief on faces, the sense that hard work had finally been rewarded. For Wilfried Nancy, it looked like a moment of vindication, not because all doubts have been erased, but because the players responded to his ideas under pressure. For the squad, it was proof that sticking to the plan, even when confidence is low, can eventually bring results. The crowd played its part too. There was frustration, certainly, moments of groans and exasperation when chances went begging or passes went astray. But there was also patience and understanding that this team is in a process, however uncomfortable that process may be. When the goals came, the release of emotion was unmistakable, a reminder of how deeply connected this club and its supporters are, even during challenging periods. Looking ahead, the importance of what comes next cannot be overstated. A full week without a midweek fixture offers a rare opportunity to work on the training ground, to address the weaknesses exposed here, and to reinforce the positives. The upcoming matches will provide very different tests, and this performance will mean little if it is not backed up. Consistency has been the missing ingredient, and finding it will define the next phase of the season. There is also the psychological aspect to consider. Winning, especially in a situation where the team had to respond to adversity, can be a powerful catalyst. It changes the mood around the club, shifts the narrative, and gives players something tangible to build on. That does not guarantee a run of victories, but it creates a platform from which improvement feels possible rather than hypothetical. In the end, this match may be remembered less for the opponent or the circumstances and more for what it represented internally. It was a moment where Celtic showed resilience, belief, and a willingness to keep pushing even when things threatened to go wrong. There are still many questions to be answered, many areas to be strengthened, and many challenges ahead, but this felt like a step forward, however small. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Celtic have once again set the rumor mill spinning across the country after a sudden announcement that stopped short of confirmation but spoke volumes between the lines. The name doing the rounds at Lennoxtown and far beyond is DIEGO Rossi, a forward long admired in scouting circles and now being linked with increasing confidence to a move that could reshape the attacking mood at Parkhead. Sources close to the club suggest the board have been quietly laying groundwork for a statement signing, one designed not just to add goals, but to inject a sense of fear into opposition backlines. Rossi's profile fits that bill neatly, quick over the first few yards, sharp in tight spaces, and known for a low center of gravity that makes him devilishly hard to pin down. He is being talked about as a player made for the intensity of Scottish football rather than one merely passing through it. There is, of course, caution in the air. Celtic have been here before, flirting with big names and leaving supporters to read the tea leaves. Yet this time feels different. Insiders hint that the club's recruitment team see Rossi as more than a marquee addition. They see him as a tone setter, someone who could redefine how Celtic press, counter and unsettle opponents who come to Glasgow expecting familiar patterns around the city. The speculation has taken on a life of its own. Pubs buzz with talk of how Rossi might link with the current attacking options, how his movement could open spaces that have too often remained closed. Defenders across the league, it is said, are already taking note, watching clips, wondering if this is the next name they will struggle to track on cold nights under the lights. Nothing is signed, nothing sealed, but Celtic's announcement has done its job. It has captured attention, stirred hope, and sent a clear message that ambition remains high. If DIEGO Rossi does arrive, the whispers suggest Scottish defences may soon find themselves facing a new and very uncomfortable question. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.